Well, good evening, brethren and companions. Welcome to the second meeting in the first degree work of Admiration Chapter under Dispensation. Part of what a lot of the guys that are involved in getting this started wanted this chapter to be was a chapter that focused on education. We want to have a presentation at our meetings. We want to share knowledge. And the first thing that we thought we'd like to share was what we think the answer to the question is, why Admiration Chapter? Why we think it's needed, what we want it to be, why we think the name Admiration Chapter embodies our hopes and aspirations for the chapter. We plan on sharing with you what we think the goals, mission, and vision of the chapter should be, and we hope that you will be as excited about being a part of it as we are. Before we get to that, we thought it would be beneficial to present a brief history of the degrees of a chapter of Royal Arch Masons. There have been untold books written on this subject of the history of the Royal Arch, and as with most Masonic history, this subject is handicapped by a lack of records from the time of its earliest formation. We do know that the Royal Arch was conferred by Masonic lodges in the early 18th century, and that some of those lodges considered the craft degrees incomplete without it. The following description comes from the YorkRite.com website. The York Rite, or more correctly the American Rite, is based on the early remnants of craft masonry that were practiced in the early 1700s. The formation of the first Grand Lodge in England in 1717 specified that the lodges were to confer only the degrees of entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason, all other degrees being considered spurious. However, many lodges have been conferring other degrees that they considered an integral part of masonry, in particular that of the Royal Arch. And they formed their own Grand Lodge in 1751, terming themselves the Ancients. And the other Grand Lodge that was formed in 1717 became the Moderns. With the merger of the two Grand Lodges in 1813 into the United Grand Lodge of England, the lodges agreed that only the three accepted degrees of masonry would be used by the lodges, but the degree of the Royal Arch would be attached to chapters allied directly to these lodges, bearing the same number as the lodge, though as a separate body. It is still the practice in English Masonry that a Masonic member is not to be considered in possession of all the degrees of ancient craft masonry until he has been exalted to the Royal Arch. Early American lodges operated in a similar manner until the establishment of the Grand Chapter of Royal Arch Masons. Again, from the YorkRite.com. The Capitulo Degrees are a set of 4 degrees controlled by the Royal Arch Chapter. They center on the construction phases of Solomon's Temple, with the exception of the degree of Past Master, hence the title of Capitulo. The degree of Past Master is the vestigial remnant of the former custom that the degrees of the Royal Arch could only be conferred on a Past Master of a symbolic blue lodge. In the United States, these degrees are considered as proprietary to the Royal Arch, while in England, there is no Past Master degree as found here, and the Mark Master degree is controlled by its own Grand Lodge. The Most Excellent Master degree is also part of the Cryptic degree in England. As stated in the foreword, the Royal Arch overseas is controlled by chapters attached to English blue lodges. The Royal Arch chapters have occasionally been referred to as the Red Lodge. In older Masonic publications, though, they should more accurately be described as the Red Degrees. In the United States, all chapter business is conducted in a Royal Arch chapter, the other bodies being only open for the conferral of degrees. Some jurisdictions open Mark Master lodges as table lodges, which act as a social focus for the local York Rite bodies. This is from the Grand Lodge of Minnesota website. The Mark Master degree, we're talking about the degrees in order now, the Mark Master degree is believed to have originated as a ceremony of registering a craftsman's mark in those years distinguished by the operative craftsmen in their temple building. It was later developed into a full-fledged degree by the Masonic fraternity as we know it today. Some scholars say that it was the earliest degree and may predate all others by many years. It is highly regarded by students and ritualists as one of the most beautiful degrees in all Masonry, teaching lessons that have proven of value in all walks of life. Some Grand Lodges place so high an eminence on the Mark Master degree that they confine it to the jurisdiction of a separate grand body, the Grand Lodge of Mark Master Masons. It is a degree that emphasizes the lessons of regularity, discipline, and integrity. It is a most impressive degree centered on the story of the fellowcraft of the quarry and their role in the building of the temple. Its importance in English craft masonry can be judged by the fact that it operates as a separate Grand Lodge and is highly sought by members of the craft in that jurisdiction. The Past Master degree. Again, from the Grand Lodge of Minnesota website. The Past Master degree came into being because the degree of Royal Arch was originally conferred by the symbolic Blue Lodge, only on actual past masters. This degree was instituted to make it possible for all worthy brethren to receive the Royal Arch degree. The first record of its conferral is found in 1768 in England. It is a degree that emphasizes that a Mason must be a past master in order to be exalted to the Royal Arch. In some grand jurisdictions, the degree is conferred upon all sitting masters of the Blue Lodge. The degree confers no actual rank upon the recipient, but is exemplified to maintain the ancient custom. Most Excellent Master degree. Continuing from the Grand Lodge of Minnesota website, the Most Excellent Master degree is a product of American innovation. It was conferred in Royal Arch chapters as early as 1783 in Middletown, Connecticut. It is by far the most spectacular degree in all of Masonry. It is the only degree that brings forcibly to our attention the completion and dedication of King Solomon's Temple, the very idea upon which all Masonic symbolism has been based. It is a degree that emphasizes the lesson of reverence. This degree is centered on the dedication of the temple after its completion, particularly the consecration of the Sanctum Sanctorum and the descent of the host into the temple. It is complementary to the Mark Master degree and completes the symbolic lessons introduced in that degree. The Royal Arch degree is the climax of ancient craft masonry and Masonic symbolism. It is described as the root and marrow of Freemasonry. It is the complete story of Jewish history during some of its darkest hours. Jerusalem and the Holy Temple are destroyed. The people of Israel are being held captive as slaves in Babylon. Here you will join with some of the captives as they are set free to return home and engage in the noble and glorious work of rebuilding the city and the temple of God. It is during this rebuilding that they make a discovery that brings to light the greatest treasure of a Mason, the long-lost Master's Word. The completion of the Master Mason degree and the sum of the original degrees of the Blue Lodges practiced in the ancient lodges of England before 1820. The degree explains the origins of the substitute word found in the Master Mason degree, the recovery of the ineffable word, and its concealment within the Royal Arch word. This degree, together with the Master Mason degree, may have once been exemplified as one large or super degree, with the Master Mason degree explaining the loss of the Master's Word and the Royal Arch explaining the recovery of the Master's Word. The presiding body is a chapter, and the presiding officer is a high priest, titled Excellent. Many of historians have traced the earliest origins of the Royal Arch degree to Ireland, late in the 17th century, and in England in 1738. In 1752, ambulatory or military warrants for lodges were introduced. This was instrumental in placing the Royal Arch degree on a par with the Master Mason degree. Military lodges were greatly responsible for planning Freemasonry in the colonies, and also gave birth to the use of the Mark and Royal Arch degrees in the New World. Lodge records show that the Royal Arch degree was conferred at Fredericksburg Lodge No. 4 on December 12, 1753. George Washington was raised in this lodge a few months prior to this date. The value of Royal Arch Masonry will be appreciated by all who are exalted to that most sublime degree. Particularly by those who are seeking to complete their Masonic education. It reveals the full light of ancient craft masonry, presents it as a complete system in accordance with the original plan, and justly entitles you to proclaim the noble name of Master Mason. Royal Arch Masonry contains some simple, plain statement of truth, easily understandable and helpful in our relation to life. Lodge symbolism deals with the lessons of the material side of life. The chapter degrees, and particularly the Royal Arch, deal with the spiritual side of life. Now that we have briefly touched on the history of the Royal Arch degrees, we are back to the question, why Admiration Chapter? I think the answer to this begins with an idea that had been rattling around in the heads and hearts of several of us involved with this project. For the last several years, there has been a movement in several parts of the country towards restoring or returning to some of the traditional observances of the craft. Several of us have read about or come in contact with brothers and organizations that have changed their Masonic bodies or created new ones that focus not on the mundane administrative details that seem to occupy a lot of Masonic bodies, but on exploring the lessons and ritual and values of the craft, and then seeking to share and exemplify those values in both the organization and their daily lives. This idea appealed to us. When companion Greg Knott first initiated discussions of starting a new Royal Arch chapter, he presented a few ideas on exemplifying of what a few ideas of what he wanted that chapter to be. He wanted a new chapter to be one that focused on exemplifying the Masonic values of brotherly love, relief, and truth. He wanted a chapter that would focus on the quality over quantity of its meetings. A chapter whose members would strive for excellence in our relations with each other, the exemplification of our degrees, and our service to Freemasonry. A chapter that would emphasize education and fellowship. Greg wanted a chapter where companions would not only exemplify civility to each other, but provide leadership throughout Freemasonry and within our communities on the topic of civility. Speaking for myself, it was this articulation of values that drew me to Greg's idea. As our discussions progressed, we concluded that this new chapter should have a new name. It should have a name not associated with a geographic location or any chapters that existed in the past. A name that held symbolic meaning for companions of the Royal Arch. A name that embodied what the chapter would mean to us. A name that would join our ideas of what we wanted our chapter to be with the lessons of the degrees of a chapter of Royal Arch Masons. Ultimately, the values Greg articulated, those values that would be the foundation of our new chapter's mission and vision, our reasons for being, are about how each of us relates to and serves God, and how we relate to and serve one another. As candidates in the Royal Arch degree, we all represented sojourners freed from Babylonian captivity to assist in the great and glorious work of rebuilding the city and house of the Lord without the hope of fee or reward. When investing the candidates with the apron of a Royal Arch Mason, the excellent High Priest said, "Its color is white, embroidered in scarlet, symbolizing the purity of your intentions and the fervency and zeal that should actuate you in the performance of every duty, and promoting the noble and glorious work of building the temple of your life and in your labors for all mankind." Indeed, when each of us was exalted a Royal Arch Mason, were we not exalted to love and serve God and to love and serve our fellow man? We wanted a name that embodied our reverence for the idea and act of loving and serving God and man. We found the name Admiration. In the 6th, or most excellent master degree, the brethren give the sign of admiration. In the lecture of the degree, the Right Worship Master states that the sign alludes to the wonder and admiration exhibited by those of our ancient brethren who were permitted to view that magnificent edifice which King Solomon had erected. He also says, "We have now dedicated the temple to the service of the Supreme Being, and by this we are reminded that we should also dedicate our spiritual building, that temple which we have been erecting within ourselves, to the service of the same Supreme Being." What better sign and name to express our awe at the wonderful opportunities our Creator has presented all of us to together love and serve God, and to love and serve mankind, and to learn to lead to others to do so as well. So in an effort to make Admiration Chapter be a chapter where companions and brethren might explore and share and teach and live our Masonic ideals and values, to make it a chapter where companions exemplify, educate, and lead in spreading those values and ideals, to make it a chapter devoted to advancing the idea and practice of loving and serving God and man, we have created the following vision, mission, and goals for the chapter. Our vision statement, what we want this chapter to be. Admiration Chapter will be a chapter of Royal Arch Masons that practices, exemplifies, and shares our Masonic tenets and values in everything we do, thereby improving not only ourselves, but the culture of Freemasonry and our communities. Our mission statement, what we're here to do. Admiration Chapter intends to positively impact its members, candidates, and visitors, and through them, their lodges, chapters, families, and communities, by emphasizing the notion that the highest exaltation of man is to love and serve God, and to love and serve his fellow man. Our goals, what we think we need to do to accomplish these things. To develop events and activities and programs that will educate and enlighten regarding Masonic values and principles, among the most important of which we believe is the need to recognize the divine presence living within all mankind, and to treat one another with the respect and civility that recognition requires. To focus on quality over quantity in our meetings, so that our meetings are occasions of good fellowship and learning. To provide opportunities for each of our companions to share educational experiences as both a student and teacher. To develop the expectation that each of our companions will share educational experiences as both student and teacher. In our work, to impressively convey the lessons of the degrees, that those experiencing them may crave further education and enlightenment. That concludes our inaugural educational presentation. Thank you all for your attendance and attention. If you have any questions,